Welcome back to the Next Level You podcast, where we help you build the bridge between your now and your next. I'm your host, Mayaria Johnson, joined by my co-host, co-visionary, and mother, Dr. Miriam Johnson.
Hello, everyone. In our last episode, we focused on what energy means for you as an individual, how to notice it, protect it, and renew it. But energy is not just personal. It's also social, relational, and even cultural. Today, we are talking about the energy that flows between people, at work, in families, in friendships, and on teams.
That's right. Energy is contagious. And if you've ever walked into a room that felt heavy or into a team meeting that felt exciting, you know exactly what we mean.
Harvard Business Review has studied this phenomenon and calls it emotional contagion. Their research shows that people quite literally catch the emotions of those around them. So when a leader or a team member brings negativity, that ripple spreads, but so does positivity, hope, and resilience.
That's why we say you don't just manage your own energy, you manage the energy you bring into every space. Whether you are in a classroom, at work, or around family, your energy leaves an imprint.
And here's an interesting parallel. In physics, there's something called the law of conservation of energy. It states that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change forms or be transferred from one system to another. The same is true for human energy. The positivity, focus, or tension you release does not disappear. It transforms and travels through conversations, teams, and environments. That's why our presence carries real power.
Exactly. When you realize that the energy you give out continues to circulate, you start treating every interaction as a choice to uplift or to deplete. And that awareness is a significant step toward your next level you, because growth begins when you learn to direct your energy intentionally.
If you have ever walked into a study group where everyone's stressed and silent versus one where people are encouraging each other, you have felt the difference. The same assignment can feel heavier or lighter depending on the collective energy.
Here's a reflection question for our listeners. What is the energy people feel when you walk into a room? And what is the energy they feel when you walk out?
That's a tough but powerful question. And it matters because your next opportunity, your next collaboration, and even your next relationship could hinge not just on your skills, but on the energy you bring and the energy that you leave behind.
Let's shift to leadership. Leaders set the tone for a team's energy. If a manager is anxious and reactive, that stress trickles down. If a teacher is disengaged, the whole class feels it. But if leaders model calm, focus, and encouragement, that spreads too.
McKinsey has found that productivity and innovation increase significantly when teams work in environments that protect energy, such as flexible scheduling, realistic workloads, and recognition of effort. In fact, leaders who focus on energy, not just output, see higher long-term performance.
And Harvard professor Amy Edmondson has done important work on psychological safety. She found that teams with high psychological safety, where people feel safe to speak up, make mistakes, and share ideas, don't just perform better, they also foster greater trust and collaboration. They also radiate more positive energy. People feel lighter, freer, and more engaged.
That is so true. And you have experienced that firsthand, Maria. Why don't you share some examples?
One thing I've noticed in my own career is how deeply leadership energy impacts my motivation. I have had senior leaders who drain my energy. Whenever my team would present our progress, it felt like what we did wasn't good enough. The feedback was rarely rooted in gratitude or acknowledgement of the progress we had made. Instead, it jumped straight to questions, suggestions, and what could be improved. Even when the intention is good, the energy lands as pressure rather than encouragement. And that energy matters because when leaders do not lead with appreciation, it becomes harder to feel excited about the work. It reminds me that people don't only respond to direction, they respond to how that direction makes them feel. But I've also been on the other side. I have worked with leaders who celebrated small wins, acknowledged effort, and made space for people's ideas. The difference was night and day. I looked forward to meetings because the energy was motivating and creative.
That contrast is powerful. It shows that leadership doesn't just shape performance, it shapes the emotional experience of being part of the team.
And this applies to students too. In a group project, if one person checks out or brings negative energy, the whole group feels it. But when someone steps up with positivity and focus, it can change the dynamic, even if the workload stays the same.
Exactly. And it connects back to our earlier letters too. Think about B is for belonging. When leaders create a culture of belonging, they are really protecting emotional energy. And in C is for confidence. Leaders who affirm people's abilities are fueling mental and emotional energy.
So here's a question for our listeners who are in leadership roles or leading student organizations. What kind of energy are you normalizing for your team or classroom? Is it urgency and stress, or focus, care, and collaboration? Now, let's be real. Not every environment is energizing. Some relationships, workplaces, or communities can feel draining. And sometimes the draining doesn't come from the work itself, but from the emotional weight of giving more than you receive. So how do you protect your energy without cutting yourself off completely?
Boundaries are the first step. Sometimes that means limiting exposure to negativity. Other times, it's about preparing yourself mentally before you enter a space so you do not absorb what does not belong to you. And sometimes it means becoming honest with yourself about the relationships or commitments where your energy is constantly being taken but rarely restored.
I have experienced this in a very real way. There have been organizations and friendships where I poured myself out, committed my time, energy, and support, but the appreciation was not reciprocated. I showed up fully, but the pouring was one-sided. And that imbalance drained me. It reminded me that being a giver is beautiful, but being an unprotected giver is exhausting. On the flip side, I am energized when my efforts are acknowledged, when someone pauses to say thank you, when I see the impact of my work, when the environment reflects back the same level of care and intention I put in. That kind of energy fills me up and helps me to keep showing up well.
You are naming something that so many people feel but often struggle to articulate. When appreciation is missing, it affects more than your mood. It affects your energy because energy is relational. When people ignore your effort or take your support for granted, it drains you. And when people see you, value you, and acknowledge what you bring, it restores you. Recognition is not about ego. It's about emotional sustainability. It reinforces that your presence matters and that what you give carries weight. That's why your story is so important. It reminds all of us to pay attention to the environments that refill us and the ones that quietly empty us.
Exactly. And for college students, this might look like protecting your time, avoiding overcommitment, or stepping back from friendships that drain you emotionally. Protecting your energy now builds habits you will carry into your career.
So, if you are in a space that feels draining, ask yourself, what boundaries do I need to set to feel emotionally safe? What conversations do I need to have to create clarity? And where do I need to step back so I can show up in ways that are healthy, sustainable, and aligned with who I am becoming? Once you learn to protect your energy, the next step in reaching your next level is learning how to direct it in ways that lift others. This is where the science meets the personal. Earlier, we talked about the law of conservation of energy. It teaches that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It only changes from form or transfers from one place to another. The energy you bring into a space does not disappear. It sets a tone that continues to circulate long after the moment ends.
That is what makes becoming an energy giver so powerful. When you offer encouragement, patience, clarity, or presence, you're not losing energy. You are transferring it in a way that transforms the environment. That transfer often comes back to you in the form of renewed motivation, stronger relationships, and greater trust. That is how influence is built. And influence is a key part of reaching your next level.
Being an energy giver is not about pretending to be positive all the time. It's about showing up with intention. Here are a few simple ways to do that. 1. Affirm someone's effort, not just the outcome. 2. Express gratitude and say thank you where others might stay silent. 3. Lead with curiosity in difficult conversations so you are adding clarity instead of adding tension. 4. Celebrate small wins to create momentum. And 5. Be fully present, put the phone down, and let people feel seen.
Think about how this shows up in real life. When you encourage a classmate before a presentation or acknowledge a coworker's contribution in a meeting, you shift the energy. That shift builds your reputation. It makes people see you as someone who inspires rather than drains. People remember how you made them feel. That memory opens doors and builds bridges to opportunities that match your next level.
Here's a practical challenge for this week. Keep an energy journal. At the end of each day, write down one moment where you gave energy to someone else. It might have been offering support, giving someone space to express their idea, or choosing patience in a challenging situation. We want you to reflect on how that moment shaped the environment and how it shaped you.
Because when you give energy, it doesn't vanish, it transforms, it strengthens relationships, it multiplies your influence, and it expands your capacity to lead. Becoming an energy giver is one of the clearest pathways to your next level you because it shifts you from reacting to environments to actively shaping them. Let's close with our next check-in for this episode. This week, we want you to focus on the energy you exchange with the people around you. Not just how you feel inside, but how your presence shapes the spaces you walk into.
Notice. Pay close attention to the emotional shifts you're experiencing throughout the week. Notice the people, the conversations, or the environments that leave you feeling grounded, inspired, or renewed. Notice the ones that leave you tense, quiet, or drained. Simply observe without judging yourself or anyone else.
Evaluate. Ask yourself what these energy patterns are telling you, which relationships strengthen you, and which ones you have to mentally recover from. Where might you be absorbing energy that is not yours? And where might you be unintentionally transferring stress, urgency, or frustration onto someone else? This step is about honest reflection and alignment.
Experiment. Choose one intentional act to shift or elevate the energy you bring into a relationship or environment this week. Maybe you offer encouragement to a teammate, choose patience during a tense moment, ask a curious question instead of assuming, or practice being fully present during a conversation. For students, this might look like lifting up your group in a team project, affirming a classmate, or showing gratitude to a professor or a mentor. Try one small act of energy giving and see what happens.
Track. At the end of each day, reflect on the impact of your experiment. How did that intentional shift influence the mood in the room? How did the other person respond? And most importantly, how did it affect your own energy? Tracking helps you recognize patterns, build awareness, and strengthen your ability to lead with intention.
Energy shapes cultures. It shapes teams, families, classrooms, and communities. When you become intentional about how you notice, evaluate, experiment, and track the flow of energy in your relationships, you give yourself and others a greater chance to thrive.
Energy is contagious, and when you learn to protect your own while sharing it generously with others, you're not just building your bridge, you are strengthening the bridges of everyone around you.
So, as you head into this week, remember, you don't have to match the energy of the room. You can shift it.
Thank you for listening. If this episode encouraged you, leave us a review and share it with someone who could use the reminder that their energy matters. And don't forget to subscribe to the Next Level You podcast on platforms such as YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Audible, or Amazon Music so you don't miss our upcoming episodes. And if you want to dive deeper into the concepts we cover in each episode, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn by searching Next Level You. That's NEXTLEVEL and the letter U. Check our show notes for details. Look for our bridge logo, and we'll see you soon.